drafted. The goal was that the sector's contribution to GDP be raised to 30% by 2020. Here we are, of course, we have our statistics, but just to be sure, is there any threshold, or have we in fact materialized this goal of reaching the 30%?
Thank you very much for inviting me to this program. Yes, Minister of Agriculture, we work towards the strategies and then the policies set out in the National Development Plan. Right. These are our guiding principles as far as our implementations are concerned. And the key areas as far as the National Development Plan is concerned in respect to agriculture has to do with the theme of modernizing and market-led agricultural sector. And this looks at the whole value chain of agriculture, from production right to consumption. And by looking at this thing, we also are able to develop targets as per the National Development Plans. And this set of targets are also the yardstick that we use to gauge our performance, from the baseline and where we go as far as those targets are concerned. Are we getting there? Yes, there is marked improvement in terms of our performance as a sector. The statistics are clearly indicative of that. For example, if you look at the major crops, starting with groundnut, the target is as per NDP is about 100 metric tons. Currently, as per this year's pre-harvest estimate, we are expecting nothing less than 90,000 metric tons. Okay. So this is a clear indication that we are on track in terms of getting there. And if you look at the rice production, this is where we're slightly behind schedule, because the target is about 100,000 metric tons, and we are somewhere around 36,000 metric tons. There are a lot of challenges, but the good news is that we are improving a lot in terms of our interventions, and then I'm sure the regional director will be able to elaborate on that. And
we will in fact dissect those as we go move into the show. Yeah. But for now, how significant has been these strides in contributing to the GDP during this period of time?
Yeah, for example, if you look at the rice production this year, clearly from the testimony of the people on the ground, I am generally convinced that the level of production will be unprecedented compared to the recent past. Okay. Yeah, the level of production as per the rice production areas, we could clearly see that we are expecting a heavy harvest.
So you're hopeful?
We are very hopeful.
I mean, the fiscal year would end soon. December is already here, but Piers, also, this sector is a major source of livelihood for 80% of rural population, aside employing about 46% of the labor force, yet it is highly dependent on rain-led agriculture, rain-fed agriculture to be precise. What happens when we experience external shocks like low or erratic rainfall falls, or in fact floods, as we've been seeing in recent years? How are you mitigating these consequences, or do you in fact plan on having a long-term solution for a more sustainable approach?
Yeah, one thing we are doing as a sector is to, apart from talking about the modernizing of agriculture, is to also pursue the climate-smart agricultural strategies. And these are strategies that are highly embedded in all our policy documents. That's why we have our very important institutions like NARI and the National Seed Secretariat. These are institutions that would look at some seed varieties that are climate resilient, and then introduce them into our production cycle, so that we are able to mitigate against some of the challenges that we have as far as climate change is concerned. If I give you a classic example, recently we have introduced, for example, in terms of rice seed, we have introduced a particular seed called the Nerica 19, L1, sorry, yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is a particular seed varieties that is climate resilient. I mean, it can and is flood resistant. So these are some of the research, ongoing research that our institutions are undertaking to respond to this climate change in terms of drought and then shortage in rainfall. But in addition to that, there have been a lot of investment also in terms of irrigations, both tidal and then pump irrigations in the country.
Very well.
So these are
interesting. Let me just shift to regional director. You're dealing directly with the people, in fact. It's an interesting conversation, really, because looking at how our people are really depending on agriculture to sustain a living, especially the fact that you're in the rural areas and you know how crucial this is for them. Why is it so important for us to come with a sustainable approach?
Yes, he talked about a new variety that we are trying that is called Nerika L19 Sub 1. And to be precise, these are two rice varieties. You know, CRR is the rice belt of the country.
Right.
We are trying these two new varieties to make sure that we respond adequately to the needs of the farmers vis-a-vis the climate issues. Then there's this Orilox 6, which is a 3-month variety. And there's Nerika L19 Sub 1, which is a 4-month variety. Okay. Now, if you look at climate change, normally the two extremes are experienced. Maybe less water or more water in terms of rainfall. Now, for the Orilox 6, within 3 months, you are able to harvest it, and the yield is about 3 tons per hectare. For the Nerika L19, within 4 months, you are able to harvest it, and it's flood tolerant, meaning when you have too much water in the fields, it can do well.
Still survive.
Yeah, so that's a climate resilience crop he's talking about. We are now trying these two varieties. We started this year, but we have to give this, how these varieties come into play. Let's give it a little bit of context.
Okay.
We talked about the NDP here. NDP, to be precise, has 8 strategic priority areas. Most of the activities or most of the programs that agriculture is doing falls under strategic priority number 3, which is to modernize agriculture for sustained growth, food and nutrition security, and poverty alleviation. Now, if you have these strategies, you need to have corresponding projects that would support this strategy. This is why we have, with the help of the ministry, we have 2 key projects that are helping us attain this strategy. One is the Regional Rice Value Chain Transformation Project.
That's ongoing at the moment?
That is starting. That would do the infrastructure we are talking about.
Okay.
Because when you talk about rice production, you have to talk about pump irrigation and tidal irrigation. And these are the 2 activities that would help us so that we can have 2 production seasons per year. If you do your rainy season production, during the rainy season, the dry season, you either pump your water through pump irrigation or tidal irrigation. Now, the Rice Value Chain Transformation Project is the software of the Regional Rice Value Chain Transformation Project. The Regional Rice Value Chain Transformation would do the hardware, the structures.
Okay.
And the Rice Value Chain Transformation Project is the one that brings these new varieties. This year, they brought in about 1.5 tons of Nerika L19 and Orilox 6 foundation seed. This was given to National Seed Secretariat. They multiply it to about 80 tons. And currently, we are trying these varieties with the farmers. In CRR South alone, we have about 87 hectares on trial with these new varieties, all in the name of responding to climate shocks.
And how is that coming along?
Yeah,
the trial phase, how is it?
Yeah, for now, we are now doing the transplanting, and a lot of farmers are enthusiastic to get into the business. And then we are trying these new varieties from Africa rice as we are speaking.
Interesting to know, and we're talking about rice, and we do know how water, in fact, is crucial to the growth of rice. Regional Director. Let's just stick with you a little bit, because I want to know what you have to say to the notion that over-exploitation of underground water reservoirs through boreholes have limited harvesting of rainwater and the use of the river Gambia for irrigation. Any concrete explanation to this?
Yes, for agriculture in general in the Gambia, the river Gambia as a source of irrigation is widely utilized in CRR and URR. You know, but for West Coast and LRR, the salt front is too far that you cannot use the river for irrigation. But for CRR and then URR, we are using this river to irrigate our fields. Now, for underground water or for groundwater, technically it is just called groundwater, we are using them mainly for the gardens. In most of these communities, we have 5-hectare garden blocks where a lot of women would go in and do their gardening. Now, for rice production, which is very key, we do not still maximally use the river for irrigation, because tidal irrigation alone in CRR South is not more than about 2,000 hectares. Now, CRR North also is around 1,000 plus hectares. Okay. Now, currently, as we are speaking, we are rehabilitating a lot of pump perimeters. This is about 10 different pump perimeters, culminating into an area of about 268 hectares. Now, if you put all this under production, minimally twice, in fact, if we do good management, we are able to do 3 times a year, especially with this Orilox 6, which is just 3 months. You know, 3 months you harvest it, the next 1 month you do your post-harvest activities, then you nurse the other. So technically we can do 3 crops per year. But even if we do not get to that, we can comfortably do 2 crops per year.
Why can't you get to that?
The 3 crops.
The 3 crops.
Yeah. For instance, some of the varieties, you may not have the 3 months variety all over the country. But for CRR South and North, it is possible to do that, so that we can get to the target. Because my boss alluded to the NDP target for rice. Nationally, we are targeting from 69,000 metric tons to 122,000 metric tons. So this is a lot, and we are somewhere around 40,000 metric tons.
P.S., are you in fact aware of these irrigation issues? What are the plans?
Yeah, like the director has said, most of the projects are developed around the challenges, where we do a design and then study our situations, look at the challenges, and then we design our projects around that. So the 2 rice value chain that he's talking about try to speak to those challenges that are on the ground. And like he would say, one of the most critical issues as far as rice production is concerned is the land development, and I mean, which also speaks to the water management in general. So if you look at these 2 projects he's talking about, huge component of them will go into that general land development. And we are very hopeful if lands are properly developed and then water properly managed, we should be able to overcome most of the challenges. Like he's saying, one of the reasons why it's also maybe challenging to do 3 crops in a season could also have to do with the water management ability, because you must have a strict calendar that you follow. Okay. But for you to be able to follow this calendar, the land must be properly developed, and then water flows in and out also must follow a specific rhythm. So
you're confident that these 2 projects you're looking at will solve these challenges?
Yeah, we are very hopeful because I mean, these are key projects that if properly managed, and then which have to underline properly managed, and I'm sure we will properly manage it.
Regional Director, you heard it. Properly managed, he has underlined that. Interesting there, P.S. But let's shift our attention to a key priority area in the National Development Plan, which of course your minister has been so keen about. The first day we had an interview with her since she assumed office, she underlined that area, which is mechanizing agriculture, and you've been mentioning it in your statement. But just to be a little bit precise, because she has been reiterating this in most of her appearances as well, and I like that fact. One thing I also like about the NDP is that it is so beautiful, and it has marvelously laid out all these plans. Now, let's talk about what you've done in terms of mechanizing agriculture, because it's important in sustaining and improving the agricultural value chain.
Yes, mechanization is one of the critical factors for agriculture. I mean, you cannot talk about serious agriculture if you are not into mechanization. Most of the, in fact, the major reason why we encounter low productivity has to do with low mechanized agricultural system that we are operating. So for us to move to the targets that have been set, we have to be very serious with mechanization. And these are levels. And I think I will allow the regional director to explain the levels. But yeah, are we doing something about mechanization? Most definitely we are doing a lot about mechanization. I think we are trying to have a shift in policy a bit in terms of our mechanization. Because initially what was happening is that we'll buy all these equipment, the tractors, the power tillers and all those things, but we distribute it to individuals or to communities or to associations. But then the problem generally is that the capacity to manage this equipment are usually lacking, because you need people with at least basic knowledge of engineering to be able to properly maintain this thing and then give them a longer life. But if you just take 50, 60 tractors and distribute it, the chances are that after 2 or 3 years, most of them will be down. And then they will be down maybe not necessarily because of a major problem, but maybe because of a small spare part missing somewhere.
So, P.S., what are you saying? Are you saying in a nutshell, mechanizing agriculture in this country won't be sustainable?
No, I'm saying we have to shift our policy in terms of doing that. And that's what, as a ministry, we are now looking into.
Okay.
Yeah, and then our intention probably would be how we can go into a private partnership arrangement, trying to manage some of this equipment.
And I'll come to that as well, because private partnership is very important. But let me just shift to the regional director. You are, in fact, I'd like to underline this because I do know that the rural population are highly dependent on agriculture. He has made raised a very, very valid point, and that is to say challenges we might encounter if we go into mechanizing, and those people there are going to be the most affected. How feasible does it become?
Yeah, thank you once again. Mechanization is very important. In fact, if you look at strategy number 3 of the NDP, it talks about modernization. And twin concepts of modernization is all about commercialization and mechanization. Now, mechanization is key that it is well studied in this country, and we want to approach it in various fronts. There are levels, as PS alluded to. You have light mechanization, medium, and then heavy. Okay. Now, for light, you may need draft animal implements like our sand hose and seeders and donkeys or oxen or horses.
That's light mechanization?
Yes, because you normally do these things on uplands. Most of our upland soils have issues, and you don't want to exacerbate those issues. Now, for medium, you can talk of the light tractors and power tillers. Okay. And these tractors and power tillers may go into our uplands as well as into our lowlands. Then for heavy, you know, we may not get into that. That's all about smart agriculture. You use drones, so yeah.
And our agriculture is mainly subsistence.
Subsistence farming. For now, you know, and the idea now is to shift from subsistence to commercialization. We are in a transition zone in most phases. So mechanization is so key that especially land preparation machinery, especially when you are dealing with rice production. In rice production, ecology is the lowlands. If you don't have land preparation machinery, forget it. And mostly these are tractors. You know, so this is why tractors are very important in our mechanization drive. Yes, government have done something. Last year, we issued a lot of farming implements ranging from power tillers, milling machines, and so forth. These were given to certain groups and certain farmers, and they are doing very well. But principally, the issue of tractors, as far as rice production is concerned, is very key.
Very key, you say. Before we go on a break, just to reiterate a little bit, P.S., aside from the fact that we're aware of all these challenges, we cannot mechanize agriculture, of course, without involving the private sector. Therefore, like you mentioned, a motivated private sector is crucial in this drive. How are you making sure that they're also part of the process? What strides have you taken in giving them the space? Do they have limits to how far they can exploit these opportunities?
Yeah, in fact, one of our key activity is to try to engage private sector as much as possible.
What have you done in this regard?
Like, for example, we already have an established unit called the agribusiness, which basically the function is to try to reach out to the private sector and then invite them to invest into agriculture. As a ministry, we have also tried to engage some of the investors, try to attract them to the rice productions and then other agricultural activities. And we also try to create incentives like matching grant in some of our projects where the person will be required to raise a certain amount of fund, and then this will be matched with a grant which is for free. All this is also motivate these individuals to be able to invest into agriculture activity. We have not also stopped there. We have also reached out to some key businessmen in the Gambia whom we know can definitely make a difference if they invest into agriculture, and then engage them into discussions and then invite them to invest in those areas, with the understanding that we are going to create a legal framework where government will be committed to certain things, so that the private individual can also have that enabling environment to be able to thrive whilst in the agriculture. Because we know that there are a lot of challenges, and for a businessman, your priority is your profit. So you are not out there to give charity.
Yeah.
So that's the role of government. Government has to make sure that the person who is putting in the money gets back something. So we look out for those challenges and try to make sure that government go into those areas, like for example, the extension services, trying to give that extension support through our regional offices. These are some of the activities we offer, apart from the financial support, but also to make sure that the issue of land is also negotiated on their behalf. Because sometimes I think that's one big challenge that we are facing as at now, which also we, as a ministry, we're trying to work on to do some reform. That's this land tenure system. Because in the past, government would develop land and then give it to the community. And inviting the private sector, generally there is this challenge of having access to those land to be able to invest. So we are also trying to look at how we shift our policies in regards to that. Since government is investing millions in developing this land, government should be able to negotiate with these communities as to how we can reserve a certain place for out of the developed land for the private sector to invest, and where we could make arrangement for that particular investor to also extend support, because these community farmers, the reason why they may not be productive to the extent we want is because of the limitation in terms of their capacity, in terms of the financial resources. But if you twin them with the private investor, the tendency is that there's going to be a win-win situation. And we have seen such models worked already.
I mean, in doing so also, we have to make sure that we have a solid export base. I don't know, what are we exporting at this point in time? Is there, I mean, opportunities for a more bigger market, because they need to see all these prospects to be able to want to come on board?
Yeah, I mean, that should be the ultimate objective, but I think we want to satisfy the local market first. Like, for example, if you talk about rice production, we are only, our local production is only contributing 19% of the total rice we consume. If I'm right,
only 19%?
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, if my statistics is quoted right, I think we are, on average, every Gambian will consume 117 kilograms of rice. Like, that's per capita. That's like more than 2 bags in a year.
Interesting.
And I think in 2017 we spent almost 84 million on importation of rice.
So we're still importing that huge
rice. So this should be the target. How do we reduce that importation? So until we meet the local market, I think then we can talk about exporting.
Seems we have a long way there, but we'll go for a short break. And when we come back, we'll look at some other issues, including messages or questions you're sending to us on social media. Do stay. back to the OGI Hour. It's coming to you from the Gambia Radio and Television Services. Always keep following us on Facebook at GRTS TV, on Twitter on GRTS TV Official, and of course Instagram as well on the same handle. And we are on YouTube. You can subscribe to our channel there at GRTS TV. We're discussing the Ministry of Agriculture, and here we have the Permanent Secretary himself, Ibrahim Sisao, and with him here is the Regional Agricultural Director of CRO there at CRO South, based at Sapu. He is Famara Trawale, and we've been discussing a lot of things here regarding the sector itself, from mechanizing the sector, privatization, and a whole lot. But PS, let's also look at young entrepreneurs who have built keen interest in agribusiness. Recently, we've seen a lot of them, especially with support from the EU TechFE funded project. We have to commend them for what they're doing also for the young people. Of course, the likes of YEP, GIZ, Annabelle have been really giving grants, mini grants to these young entrepreneurs just to support them start up a business in this field. Where do you come in here as a ministry?
Okay, before I answer that, I want to also give a bit of motivation here in terms of our level from in terms of in the area of rice production. Yeah, much as we are a bit far off from the target or the consumption requirement, I'm still very encouraged because I've seen a lot of good signals. It's just a question of improving on our coordinations and improving on certain activities, because the potentials are there. We have the water, we have the land, and then we have this the input, and then the knowledge, the expertise. These are all.
I was going to say that because recently I understand that there have been a lot of people who've graduated with their masters who are working in your sector.
That's
so where are we doing wrong?
Yes. So there are some little challenges, and the good thing is that if you know your problem, then it's easy to solve. I think we know our problems, so it's a question of now arranging ourselves and then to get on track.
2021 is here already. How long will that take, PS?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, yes. 2021 is our targeted period, but then you may not necessarily achieve what you target within the period, but the fact that you are on track and you may and moving in the right direction, I think that's what's important now, to set yourself in the right directions and start working towards that. And if I mean, still going back to the rice production, I said all the requirements are there and all the good signals are there, so it's a question of now trying to channel the resources directly and then get to those problems and fix them.
Very well. Yeah. So we go back to my earlier mentioned
to the youth.
Yeah, the youth.
Yeah, the youths are very critical component of the ministry. Again, I have to emphasize that if you look at all our policy documents, there is always a whole chapter about youth and youth involvement in agriculture. So, and this is something that we also try to pursue in any activity that we are dealing with. Few days back we had this private forum with business actors, and then basically this about generating ideas as to how the private sector can be involved in the whole agricultural production, and that's one activity that the ministry has tried to do. But again, if you look at our projects, there are generally a lot of components on youth empowerment. That's to engage the youth, try to give them the necessary support, and then encourage them to go into agricultural activity. So these are some of the things that the ministry is trying to do, so that we have more youth into agricultural activity. And recently also we are reviving our mixed farming centers, and one of the things we do is to collaborate with the Ministry of Education, Basic and Secondary Education, to try to establish some agricultural high schools in these mixed farming centers. Recently, if you go to Pirang, we've already a high school has been constructed, and this is not going to be just a theoretical high school, but it's going to be a high school where we'll be able to attract young people and then train them to very, very practical, and then to also learn to appreciate agriculture.
Yeah.
So these are some of the things we want to do.
That's
for
a
the
good
youth.
one,
Yeah.
and the PS from Education has actually highlighted that on the OGI show here.
Yeah.
PS, let's just move briefly to a very important issue here, which of course is COVID-19, and it has affected all our lives, and I'm sure this particular sector is not an exception. What are some of the challenges that this pandemic brought along, and I mean, how much has the sector been affected? Do we know what the supply chain will look like in the coming months?
Well, COVID is a global pandemic, like you said, and everybody, directly or indirectly, is affected. And since our lives are linked, obviously you cannot but say that everybody is affected. And yes, it has some negative impacts on the level of production, because if you're looking at the production, labor force is very, very important. And we had some lockdown here for a period of time, and this has limited in our labor force in terms of their activities, not only because of their physical activities, but also in terms of their access to the basic needs. I mean, needs in terms of food and nutrition, to be able to be actively involved in the farming activities. So this indirectly has affected the labor force that should have exerted more energy in terms of their productions. So this is one problem, and resources, in terms of flow of resources also. I mean, in terms of the ministry, where most resources that should have been channeled to the support of this sector has also been diverted to attention of this COVID thing.
Okay, so where do we see the supply chain in the coming months?
Yeah, but the good thing is that I think it has been a bit countered by the pattern of the rainfall. This year, I think we had a very good climate, weather, and then the rainfall was very positive. And then it thus has led to bumper harvest despite all the challenges of this COVID-19. We are expecting more groundnut, like I said already, nothing less than 90,000 metric tons for this year. And then the rice production also, if you go to the Sapo area, the CRR South and North, you will realize that it's very, I mean, it's the harvest
is good.
Yeah, is going to be very good.
Okay.
And for the first time, if probably be right, for the first time in the history of the Gambia, with the COVID foods relief package, the local farmers are able to bid government invited bidding process for suppliers to supply rice, and then the local farmers are able to bid.
They also took part in that?
Yeah, they took part in it. So I think that's a very good indication that things are moving in the positive direction.
Yeah, I think in addition to what PS said, there were deliberate interventions made by the ministry through the supply of, for instance, inputs, to counter this COVID issue. Initially government gave food aid. It did not stop at that. The ministry came up with a program of supplying inputs to these farmers in the form of improved seeds, in the form of fertilizers, in the form of plowing services.
Interesting.
Yeah, so these were all deliberate interventions to counter the
consequences
of COVID.
Good to know that we are on a very strong footing, right, for the coming months. Good to know, otherwise we don't want to, instill fear that there will be food insecurity in the coming months. But I would like at this point to go right onto social media to check what our followers have been asking, to assess their interest areas. And I'll first of all start on with Twitter. This one is from @Kedi, and she's asking, why would farmers be given donkeys instead of mechanized farming machines in the North Bank region? Yes.
Yes, I will start, and then the regional director will compare. I think that is very, very important to elaborate on that and do a bit of clarifications. First, yes, farmers are given donkeys, but they are given many other things apart from donkey.
What are those?
These donkeys were procured out of our arrangement with the National Assembly Select Committee, which negotiated on behalf of the Minister of Agriculture an extra $100 million to improve on our activities. And out of these 100 million, we were able to procure a lot of machinery, which include the two combine harvesters, milling machines, pumps, threshers, and yes, I mean various kind of machines that we required, and these were distributed to different communities. But apart from that, also we were able to give about $20 million to Department of Livestock, and this is where they used to buy vaccines, and they were able to do vaccinations on small ruminant of something around 120,000 small ruminants were vaccinated against CVBB and other kind of diseases. So we were also able to use this money for the first time again. We were able to locally produce all our seeds needs. So the money was given to National Seed Secretariat, and this was used to locally procure seeds, and which were distributed to farmers.
Right.
So these among many things, that's what the money is used for. And then donkeys, horses were also bought, but then I'm sure these were they were demand driven. The farmers were engaged.
Regional Director, you were talking about light mechanization.
Yes,
in a way, I don't know, is this also part of that process?
Yeah, exactly. These are mainly for upland crop production, like you know, small maize fields, small groundnut field, where you would use your accompanying implement like the signhold and the cedar with your draft animal to be able to do those. You know, the peers talked about conservation agriculture or climate smart agriculture. We want to discourage a lot of tillage of our soils. You know, so it does not mean there is not going to be expansion in terms of mechanization. Yes, there would be expansion in terms of mechanization in areas, especially like the lowlands, where tractors are expected.
Okay.
I'm sure PS would talk about that.
So there are areas where tractors
Yes,
cannot operate on?
Yeah, we're expecting a lot of tractors, and their management, we would talk about them, because we feel that these farmers, what they need is the services on time, not necessarily owning these machines, because management becomes an issue.
So are you saying the farmers themselves are actually happy with having the donkeys?
Yes, this is very minute proportion of farmers. Each region is just about 25 farmers for these donkeys. Others were given, you know, power tillers, threshers, milling machines, and we expecting tractors as well. You know, so it's only 25 farmers per region for these draft animals.
Interesting, because when the donkeys were shown on social media, people were, you know, very much, I mean, interested in the fact that why aren't they given machines instead of donkeys? So you've now, you know, dissected the whole reason for giving them.
Most of them are subsistence farmers.
Right, I imagine.
If there were commercial farmers, you would expect a tractor, and you would expect a tractor operator that would know the plowing depth of our soils, because you need not to go so further down that you are spoiling the soil. You know? So those are all issues that we looked into.
Well, if that,
so it's different levels.
Okay, if that's the reason, well, maybe the audience, I mean, they have to judge the viewers, but I think that's genuine. But let's just move on to some other issues here. We have on Facebook, Lending is asking, my able peers continues desilting the canals. Will both widen and deepen it. Therefore, why can't we think of leaning the main canals so that desilting could be a thing of the past? I'm also suggesting that the two main schemes, perimeter dikes, be looked at. I don't understand these, the jargons, but PS, I hope you understand what the person is trying to,
Yes, I understand, but my regional director
Regional Director, you want to come into that?
Okay. He or she is talking about the silting of the canals.
Right.
These canals are tidal irrigation scheme canals. Normally, you have primary canals that are dug to be able to get water into the fields by way of gravity, force of gravity. At high tide, water would flow into these fields through these canals. Desilting means cleaning up the canals, because canals are silted from time to time, because it is moving water over soil, so there would be detachment, and then water would transport it. That's transportation, and there would be deposition somewhere. Then it will, you know, be there, and then you need to move it so that to have free flow of water into the fields.
Okay.
Lining the canals means concreting them. Now, most of these tidal perimeter canals are very big. Some of them have a diameter of about 15 meters. You know, so if you want to canal those ones, concrete them all through along kilometers of length is so expensive. Normally, the pump irrigation canals, these are smaller in size, are normally lined, the primary canals, meaning they are concrete. You know, so annually or biannually, you need to desil these canals, clear them for the tidal pump perimeters to be able to get free flow of water adequately to the rice fields.
And the person is advocating for lining instead of the desilting.
Yeah, meaning concreting all of them.
And that's expensive.
Yeah,
is that what you're saying?
It's better, but expensive.
So at this point, we can't afford that.
It's a question of getting more resources.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like a trade-off now. I mean, with with this current situation, you can do more. You can create more canals. But if you want to do the lining, it means that then you, with the same amount of resources, then you'll be able to do very little.
Okay.
But for now, it's a question of comparing what is needed for now with your limited resources.
What's needed for now?
With your
What is that?
I think it's a valid point, and then studies are on the way in most of these perimeters. I don't know which perimeter he or she is referring to, because we have various perimeters, both in the tidal schemes and in the pump irrigated schemes. You know, so that these canals can be narrowed, you know, to be able to allow, you know, the lining opportunities.
Okay.
You know, so studies are on the way. And
so for now, we still desilting. You're still desilting.
We are still desilting, especially the primary canals.
Okay. I think that's noted. Let's just move to some other questions, because we still have some more here. Musa is asking, presently, investors are not secure with the land tenure system. Yeah,
I think I touched on that slightly. The land tenure system is a problem, and Musa is one of those key investors. I'm sure you've been seeing this Maru farm.
Okay, not really sure.
Is one person who has...
Okay, the person has the Maru farm.
Yeah, he has done very well in terms of rice production, which endorses packaging, and then it's a very popular brand in town right now. Most people are buying it for the...
So he has a valid concern.
Yes. Sure. Yeah, so, I mean, he works with my regional director, I mean, at the same region. I think...
Niajibe mol jamala ko do mo baka sumuna la o mburo bayri mburu janala lu fanan ni man ko kaje jaba bala ne kilala lo talo